So do you remember becoming critical of Israel, becoming involved in this issue? Did you have an aha moment? Is this a special issue for you, or is it more just part of your commitment to human rights?
Yeah, it's not. There's no. I mean, I've known Israel has been corrupt, and and it's an apartheid state, and there's just no argument you can have with me that comes from an emotional place that's going to change my mind about facts. And if we're going to understand the universally understood definition of what is apartheid, well, that's Israel. It fits. There's nothing to argue, and I don't care. I don't feel tribal. I don't give a shit. That applies to everything. I don't, get upset about, white men are victims, and I'm a white man, I should be upset, or Jews, or whatever, bald people. Just a cursory understanding of history and in recent history and what how Israel came to be and all that. There's right and there's wrong. You can't bend it to your will.
Thank you for writing this really great piece at Mondo Weiss. How the UN could act today to stop the genocide in Palestine. So walk people through how the UN could do this and what this little used UN mechanism is.
Yeah, right. So I think everybody is aware by now that essentially all international institutions have failed utterly to take the action that would be necessary to put an end to this 23 months of live stream genocide that we've been witnessing in Palestine. And it's normal that folks are saying, what happened to all these international laws, all these international institutions? The problem is people often don't dig much deeper than that. And so the quick answer is, well, the US, which is a permanent member of the UN Security Council, which is the only enforcement body in the international system, vetoes every attempt to do something meaningful. But there are a lot of countries out there that like to hide behind that veto, right? They like to say, well, we tried, but the US vetoed it. There's nothing we can do. And what my piece says is there is something they can do. There are a few things that they could do. One is that the obligations that they have under existing human rights treaties actually oblige them to take action to intervene if they're in a position to do so, to help to stop the genocide, to break the siege, to bring in humanitarian aid, to protect civilians, and so on. So, for example, the Geneva Conventions are treaties that not only force countries to respect the rules that are in the Geneva Conventions, but they're also obliged to, quote, ensure respect, which means they have to take action when other countries are violating them to step in. None have done that.
I went on Piers Morgan. I knew I was going to debate this guy, Shabbos Kestenbaum. So in order to prepare, I looked at some debates that he had been on, Piers Morgan. And this one struck me as maybe not the most honest or informed.
This war can end the minute Hamas surrenders and returns the hostages. In fact, there's a ceasefire deal on the table right now that Adam Boehler, who's the U.S. envoy for hostages, and Steve Witkoff have repeatedly offered to Hamas. That deal is on the table and has been on the table for the last 2 weeks. The only party that has rejected that ceasefire is Hamas. So if you truly want the killing to stop, if you truly want...
You can hear... He's rattling out these talking points faster than he can breathe.
Well, he's the Hasbaratron. That's how he was trained.
Exactly. Yeah.
Try to get any Western government to tell you that Israel has a nuclear weapon.
Right.
Seriously, no one will tell you. They will. You ask them, does Israel have a nuclear weapon? And you'll get two answers. Iran must be prevented from acquiring nuclear weapons, and Israel has a right to self-defense. That will be their answer.
Right.
It's kind of the dirty little secret of the Western club. And everyone knows it. And behind closed doors, people talk about it openly. But no one will admit it in public because you can't acknowledge that a state that has refused to sign the NPT, that refuses inspections, has a nuclear arsenal, and still pretend that there should be no consequences attached.
We'd have Oswald running down the stairs to show how hard it is to do this. And get out of the lunchroom in time to see Marion Baker. It doesn't jive. It doesn't jive. These are physical things you can do on film. As early, and the big thing about this latest information is that it's the degree of involvement of Oswald with the intelligence community. That's the massive evidence of some kind of collusion. How does this guy who apparently has no background and is a bum and is a lone nut, how does a lone nut happen to know all these people who he's seen with in New Orleans and in Dallas and in maybe Mexico City? He's seen with agents. Why does Angleton have his name on file from 59 on? It indicates what Richard Schweiker called the fingerprints of intelligence are all over Oswald. And we have never faced up to that because why? Because the CIA is sacred in American political history or something. They're not sacred. They're a bunch of criminals.
Lisette, by the way, was a big fan of you too, as was I, and we're both very upset because what happened to Bono? How can you be Irish and not be outspoken for Palestine?
He's an idiot. Bono's a complete prick. He goes to, I nearly used the F-bomb then.
Okay, you can.
He goes to Davos, for fuck's sake.
Oh, you're right. Yeah, and he did stuff with George W. Bush.
He just loves living. Yeah, he goes to George W. Bush's ranch and hangs out with his pal. Are you insane, Bono? I'll answer that, Bono. Yes, you fucking are, mate.
Right.
And it's not all right. It's terrible.
No, it's terrible, yeah.
But if you'll be in a band with a bloke who calls himself The Hedge, I mean, what can you expect?
The Hedge or The Edge?
I thought it was called The Hedge.
No, The Edge.
I know that. I know.
Oh, you're making a joke. Sorry.
You're like a whore. Kept in a Sean Hannity, you've always been a whore in a brothel. You have hit a new low, Hannity, and
so good.
Something is wrong. Somebody killed this young guy, and everyone is asking who done it. And we're supposed to believe they think we're this stupid? So Kash Patel is there and he doesn't say a word? And Donald Trump's in the Yankee Stadium? What the hell is going on here? I'm just an American citizen who's been in the business of observing since I'm 18 years old, and I don't buy one word of this narrative, not one single word.
By the way, you know what his real last name is?
Michael Weiner.
Michael Weiner, yeah.
Is it really?
Michael Weiner, and he has a master's degree from the University of Hawaii in medical botany and medical anthropology.
Yeah, he's a botanist. He's written books on like natural medicine.
Yeah, really. From the University of California, Berkeley in nutritional ethnomedicine.
Yeah.
Right, that homeopathy.
Michael Savage Lear.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
Bing Lear with Michael Savage.
Oh yeah, I like it.
A bunch of people came to hear Ben-Gvir. I was in Manhattan in front of the Israeli consulate with hundreds of Jews protesting my words were something to the effect of dirtying this beautiful country with his presence. Okay. Right. That said, I obviously am very opposed to their hosting this guy. Again, I literally protested his presence in our country at the same time. But they're not a homogeneous group, and I would ask not to judge all the Lubavitches by those thugs' actions. Zionism has nothing to do with Judaism.
Right.
Some of those guys were Orthodox Jews. They could be Zionists. Ben-Gvir himself wears a yarmulke. And in my speech, I told him that if he wants to be a Zionist, he should take off his yarmulke and eat some pork. That's literally what I said.
I mean, the Israelis invaded somebody else's territory. They took people's homes, and they did many of the things that the Nazis did to the Jews, and they're really doing it. You can't be more evil than what they're doing. They are doing evil that is just as great as what the Nazis did. And in some ways it's worse because they kind of boast about it.
Right.
Hitler had the decency to try to keep it secret.
Right.
You can't be more evil. And anybody who doesn't recognize that it's evil, I can't probably communicate with that person. I don't know how. That might be temporary insanity. I can imagine that some Israelis who are today in support of what their country is doing in Gaza or in the West Bank even, some of them might in 10 years wake up and say, why did I justify that? I shouldn't have. I don't know. If you don't see that it's evil to do those things to other human beings, then you're in a different universe from me.
Well, it's interesting because you just said that you live in a different universe from people who don't see the evil of what Israel's doing, which is funny because Gabor Maté, he's amazing on this issue.
We are approaching October 7th.
Yeah.
When the horrible massacre happened in Israel.
Yeah.
Where young children were murdered, burned, babies in ovens.
That didn't happen. There were no babies in ovens. You and I don't live in the same world. We don't. You're a good person, good heart. We don't live in the same world. Just let me finish, because you live in a bubble, that's why.
I think we don't know the number of Israelis who were killed by the Israeli forces. And you want to remember, it was not just the Hannibal doctrine. The fact is that the Israelis got caught completely by surprise, and they did not have a very good backup plan. So what they did was they rushed in massive firepower, and they used that firepower to attack Hamas and the other Palestinian forces that had moved into Israel proper. And they killed a significant number of people, not with the Hannibal doctrine, but just with all that firepower that was brought to bear against Hamas and other Palestinians who were intermingled with all sorts of Israelis. Then there's the whole issue of the Hannibal doctrine, because as we know, the Palestinians were bent on taking many of their captured Israelis back to Gaza. And the Hannibal doctrine calls for killing those people before they get there. So some Israelis were killed as a result of the Hannibal doctrine.
Fire me, asshole,
Yeah.
Fire me.
Yeah.
And the reason I felt that was not because I'm an especially brave person or I have private money or anything. But what I felt was that, when I go to, say, Lebanon, and I lived in Lebanon for a while, when I'm in Palestine and whatnot, in the camps in Jordan, I meet people who are in much worse condition than me, unemployed.
Right.
If I lose a tenure track job, okay, right now I don't have health insurance. I don't have a tenure track job anymore. I quit, actually. I don't have health insurance. I live in South America. I don't give a shit, okay? But I didn't do it because I'm actually, if you yell at me, I'll start crying. I don't have that strength.
Right.
But on the other hand, I just felt that my life is always going to be better than somebody in a Palestinian camp.
I just want to say Clarissa Ward is not powerless. She's one of the most famous journalists in the world. Palestinians do not need world famous journalists to work behind the scenes. They need them to put their jobs on the line and resign in protest. That's what they need. So, when I was at RT and Russia annexed Crimea, I put my job on the line. And I told my boss, if I can't say this on air, I'm walking. Where is that integrity? Where's the dignity? Where's the self-respect to come out almost 2 years into a genocide after the performative nonsense she did on the ground in Palestine, to come out almost 2 years later and say targeting journalists is a war crime? Look, all the carefully calibrated language that you see is so detached. Yeah, no shit. It's detached. Why aren't you challenging that? Why aren't you pushing out in front? Imagine the respect that she would get if she resigned in protest, because anything less than that is enabling the propaganda and laying the groundwork for genocide, Clarissa. You are complicit unless you quit. All of the work behind the scenes is meaningless. No one cares about that. What we care about is what you say up front and in the public eye. So what is it? What's it going to be? I mean, all of this is just a disgrace.
We've been at war with these poor people for almost 2 decades now, helping the Saudis, the Emirates, and others, and we haven't beat them yet. That ought to tell us something. That They have got insurers not willing to insure shipping. They've got shippers not willing to ship in a place that's more important than the Persian Gulf. About 50 to 60% of the commerce in the world passes up through that area. We had a tabletop at the U.S. Institute of Peace recently closed down by Donald Trump. Incidentally, that tabletop was sponsored by Central Command and Africa Command. We had the military all over the Peace Institute. And we were talking about this area of the world, the Bab el-Mandeb and the Red Sea and all the commerce through there. Now it's pretty much stopped because of Al-Ansar, the Houthis. That's incredible. They are some kind of valiant fighters. You just got to take your hat off to them.
Yeah, and they're totally demonized and vilified as these terrorists and murderers. When how many people have we killed in Yemen? We being the United States Army.
We and the Saudis and the Emiratis.
Yeah,
yes.
right. I mean, it's disgusting.
It's disgusting, really. It truly is. And I got to say this for them. They have said, they've been very explicit. Stop the genocide. Let humanitarian assistance get in, and we won't do a thing. And they did stop during the ceasefire. They started up only again when Netanyahu started up again. They've been very explicit about that.
Yeah, again, like incredibly moral position.
The only Arabs with a set of cojones.
Yeah, to find out how to say that in Arabic.
I wish I did.
So excited to be talking to Ken McCarthy, who is a JFK researcher who focuses on the relationship between JFK and Israel. And as you'll shortly see, this is extremely relevant, not just to history, but to where we are today. So welcome, Ken.
Thanks for having me, Katie.
So tell people why this isn't just about history, why this has an impact on what Israel is doing literally as we speak.
Well, two things. One of the reasons the reason Israel is able to do what it's doing right now is, number one, they have nuclear weapons. And related to that, they get endless support from the United States. The second thing is they are allowed to lobby in the United States in any way they want. They're the only country allowed to do that on earth. That's the pillar of the genocide. You take those two pillars away and the genocide stops now. There is a different path for the United States. And not only is there a different path, we were on that path under JFK. Right. And nobody seems to know this because it's been written out of the history. And that's what I'd like to talk about today. But you're right. It's a war of words. It's a war of ideas. It's a war of propaganda. We have the truth on our side, but we have to tell the truth as much as we can.
It would be nice if the FBI would explain why Epstein's other residences were not raided, like the Zorro Ranch property in New Mexico, never raided. And then why, it took them a month to get to the island in the U.S. Virgin Islands, Little St. James. Be nice to know that. And of course, some of arguably some very important documents, I believe, could be obtained by the Department of Justice that are held not by the FBI, but the U.S. Virgin Islands, because there was this case involving the U.S. Virgin Islands and J.P. Morgan as it related to Epstein. That case got settled out of court, so it didn't go to trial. But I believe those documents would be very, very, very telling. But I would argue the reason they won't come out is because one of the people subpoenaed as part of that investigation was Elon Musk.
Oh, wow.
Yes. He wasn't necessarily accused of wrongdoing, but was subpoenaed because he was suspected of having had some sort of involvement with Epstein and JP Morgan. His relationship with JP Morgan and Deutsche Bank, obviously the JP Morgan one was covered up because they settled out of court and kept all the information from coming out in court. And then also there's the case of, Epstein in the Deutsche Bank case, where, one of the judge overseeing it, her son was murdered as she was about to start overseeing that case. And then, it suddenly just gets no one reports on it, and then it settles out of court as well. Obviously, I think there is some stuff there with the money flows that is a big problem for both parties. And so even though you think it would be politically expedient, for the Trump administration, to report on, Tom Pritzker or something like that, since his family's so tied to like the Obama network or whatever, it's not going to happen, because you pull on some of that and it just airs out too much dirty laundry of the whole system that it absolutely involves both parties.